One of the biggest criticisms I constantly hear about XRP is incredibly simple. Matty, XRP price is low. People look at Bitcoin in the tens of thousands with aspirations of being worth $500,000 one day. Then they look at Ethereum sitting in the thousands of dollars. And then they look at XRP sitting anywhere between $1 or $2 and instantly assume XRP is underperforming or weak or falling behind the rest of the crypto market. But today I want to show you something that could completely change how you look at XRP and possibly how you look at the entire crypto industry. Because what if I told you XRP might only look cheap because most investors are measuring crypto completely wrong? And that brings us to something I've been working on, and it's called the XRP Supply Illusion Theory. Before we dive into this, a quick heads up. I co-host the UK Crypto Podcast alongside Paula Talks Crypto. We release brand new episodes every single Friday at 7 PM UK time, right here on YouTube and also over on Spotify. We break down crypto debates, market psychology, industry news, and beginner-friendly education. I'll link the podcast in the description below, and I'll also link at the end of this video so you can jump straight into the episode after this one finishes. Right, let's get into this. Let's start with something very simple. Most people judge cryptocurrencies based purely on price of one coin. And that's natural. You see Bitcoin priced high, it feels valuable. You see XRP priced low and it feels cheap. But here's the truth most people never stop to consider. Price alone tells you almost nothing about how valuable a crypto network actually is. Because price is only one piece of the puzzle. The real metric that matters in crypto is market capitalization. Market cap shows you the total value of the entire network. And it's calculated using a very simple formula. Market cap equals price multiplied by supply. If a cryptocurrency has fewer tokens, each token will naturally be worth more. If a cryptocurrency has more tokens, each token will naturally be worth less. That difference has nothing to do with the performance or adoption. It's simply mathematics. And this is where my thesis comes in. The XRP Supply Illusion Theory explains how investors misjudge cryptocurrency value because they focus on price of each token instead of supply and network valuation. XRP has a maximum supply of 100 billion tokens. That number is dramatically larger than most major cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin has 21 million coins. Ethereum has just over 100 million coins. That difference massively changes how price appears on the charts. So today, I want to run through an experiment that removes the distortion. Let's imagine that every major cryptocurrency had XRP supply model. We keep their market caps exactly the same and we spread that value across 100 billion tokens. This creates what I call the 100 billion benchmark. And when you run this experiment, the results are genuinely eye-opening. Bitcoin would sit around $13. Ethereum would sit around $2.50. BNB would sit around 87 cents. Solana would sit around 49 cents. And Cardano would sit around 10 cents. And Chainlink, well, that would be around 6 cents. And this is the part most people won't expect. When you standardize supply across crypto, XRP already ranks as one of the highest value infrastructure networks in the entire market. Only Bitcoin and Ethereum clearly sit above it. Everything else sits below. This completely flips the narrative of people that are solely focusing on price of each token. Because XRP doesn't look like a struggling altcoin anymore. It looks like a top tier financial network. Now, critics often point at XRP supply and say it's a weakness. But to understand XRP, you have to understand its purpose. Bitcoin was designed to be scarce. It was built to act as digital gold. XRP was built very differently. XRP was designed to move money globally, to help banks and payment providers settle transactions instantly, and to act as a bridge between different currencies, and also to support liquidity across global financial corridors. And to achieve that, XRP needs scale. Large supply supports global transaction throughput, micropayment capability, liquidity efficiency, and reduced friction in settlement systems. Bitcoin stores value. XRP moves value. Both are important, but they solve very different problems. Humans naturally associate a higher price with higher quality. We see it everywhere in life. Luxury goods, cars, watches, property. But in crypto, that instinct can be completely misleading. Two cryptocurrencies can have identical market value, yet one could cost $50,000 per coin and the other could cost 50 cents. Price is simply how value is divided. And this psychological trap is exactly why XRP is so often misunderstood. Now let's address one of the biggest criticisms XRP receives, and honestly, one that gets thrown around constantly. You'll often hear people say banks aren't using XRP. And here's the important thing. Right now, they're not entirely wrong. Most financial institutions are still in testing phases, regulatory clarity phases, infrastructure rollout phases, or early onboarding phases. Large financial systems do not flip switches overnight. Banks operate in one of the most heavily regulated industries on the planet. They move slowly, carefully, and cautiously. If we look honestly at XRP today, it sits somewhere between testing, regulatory alignment, early onboarding, and limited real-world deployment. Adoption doesn't jump from zero straight to global dominance. It moves through phases. First, you got proof of concept, then you got pilot programs, then you got small scale deployment, then institutional onboarding, then eventually full scale usage. And this is where the conversation becomes extremely interesting, because XRP was never designed for retail hype cycles. It was designed for transactional volume. It was designed to act as liquidity between global currencies. Now imagine what happens if financial institutions begin transitioning from testing XRP to actively using XRP for liquidity routing. Because if that transition happens, demand dynamics could change dramatically. And then, what will the haters have to say then? Global cross-border payments move trillions of dollars every single year. Not millions, not billions, trillions. And those transactions currently move through systems that are slow, expensive, and inefficient. If even a small percentage of those payment flows being used XRP as a bridge asset, that introduces an entirely new demand structure. Price ultimately moves because of supply and demand. If XRP begins facilitating larger volumes of global transaction flow, demand for liquidity could increase. Higher demand interacting with fixed supply creates upward price pressure. And because XRP has fixed maximum supply, increasing transaction volumes do not increase token creation. It increases usage of existing tokens. Financial networks growth is uncapped once they reach adoption tipping points. The more institutions that join, the more liquidity corridors open, the more efficient the network becomes, the more attractive it becomes for additional institutions to join. If XRP enters a full institutional usage phase, the network effect could become one of its most powerful growth dividers. There is no guaranteed timeline for mass institutional XRP usage. Regulation still matters, adoption still requires infrastructure rollout, and competition still exists. But dismissing XRP because banks are not fully using it yet ignores how financial technology adoption historically unfolds. Because if XRP eventually transitions from testing to active global usage, what happens to the argument that XRP has no utility? And more importantly, what happens to price discovery when infrastructure demand meets that fixed supply? If XRP reaches Ethereum's market cap, it would sit around $2.50. If XRP reaches Bitcoin's market cap, it would sit close to $14. And again, these are not predictions. These are valuation comparisons based on real market data. When you combine supply structure, network design, and valuation comparisons, you begin to see a very interesting long-term picture. XRP is already positioned as a major infrastructure asset. It was designed specifically for cross-border financial settlement. It benefits from increasing global payment demand, and its supply supports scalability rather than scarcity. Understanding token supply is one of the biggest advantages investors can have, because many investors chase coins purely because they look cheap. But low price does not automatically mean high upside. Network value is what drives long-term growth, and supply determines how that value appears on the price chart. And I want to leave you with this. Remember, price is perception, market cap is reality. That's the XRP Supply Illusion Theory. And if this video helped you understand crypto valuations differently, drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to check out the UK Crypto Podcast, which I co-host with Paula Talks Crypto. New episodes drop every Friday at 7 PM UK time on YouTube and Spotify. I'll link the podcast in the description, and there'll be a direct link on the screen at the end of this video so you can jump straight into the latest episode. And if you want to learn how I personally trade, analyze markets, and stay ahead of crypto trends, check out the Crypto Wolfpack community. There's a link in the description, or you can head over to cryptowolfpack.co.uk, because crypto can be complicated, but it doesn't have to be confusing. And it definitely doesn't have to be done alone. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of this video. I appreciate every single one of you. Please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. If you can see a hype button down below, press that hype button. It is 100% free to press. I'll be seeing you on the next one. And remember this, the strength of the wolf is in the pack.